Hello and welcome in. Mark here, aka the Markster. This is video number 76 in the FreeCAD series. Today we're continuing to look at the MeshRemodel Workbench, and we're going to remodel this little guy here. So let me show you which version of FreeCAD I'm using. This is 0.19 revision 2.22.66. This is one of the pre-release versions, one of the development builds. You should be on 0.19 instead of 0.18, especially if you're going to follow my videos, because not all the stuff necessarily is going to work the same way. So what is this object here? Well, the name of the file is Apple IIESMK key system, which leads me to believe that perhaps this is a part for an Apple IIe keyboard. I had no idea any of those are still kicking around, but maybe they are. So let's go to the MeshRemodel Workbench. If you didn't watch the previous video, you should stop here and go back and watch that one. So in this case, I'm going to select the mesh object and I'm going to create the points object. The points object gives us only the vertex, only the vertices, or vertexes if you prefer. That is proper grammar. It is a proper alternative spelling and pronunciation. So we'll use these points as references to create these circles and arcs and what have you. This is actually quite a small piece. So my first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a face right here of this part, and we'll extrude it back to this distance, and then we'll make this face on this side, extrude it in that direction, and see if we can fuse them both together. Now these are actually arcs. Watch, if I select the two ends and create a line segment and zoom in here, you can see that there's a sagittus here. It's not a straight edge. It has a little bit of an arc to it. So I'm going to delete that line. Now the way that we create an arc is we select the first point. We need 3 points. First point will be the starting point. The next point will be some point in the middle somewhere. And then the last point is where the arc is going to end. And then we'll create the arc. And we'll do the same for all 4 arcs on this object. 3 points define an arc. So we cannot use the wireframe for this. We need to use the points object to get to the points. Now these are draft objects. So notice we have some options here. We could change the radius, whether to make a face or not, which is going to have to be false with an arc, and the angles. I'm going to select all 4 of these and hide them all, because I have found through experimentation that in order to get these wires to connect, it's better to not select the edge of the arc, but rather select the points that we use to create the arc. So I'm going to create the line edges here with the polygon tool. Oops, I forgot. I actually didn't. I just want to show you. If you hold down Shift, it won't close it. And all closing does is creates this extra line to wrap the last point back to the first. So we can just delete that if we forget to click the Shift key. And now we'll come back around and make this one. What went wrong? Something went wrong. Oh, I hit the wrong button. I hit the wrong toolbar icon. Alright, this one here is what we need. Hold down Shift and start here and go to these. So the order of selection is important, because that's how your wire is going to get, that's how your edges are going to get created. And we've got one more to go, I believe. Let me hide this and see where we're at. Yeah, we got one more in here to go. The wrong button again. The wrong toolbar icon again. Sometimes it helps to move it around and make sure you got the right point selected, because it can get confusing. Alright. Now. So now we can show these arcs again. And select the first one in the tree, and then scroll down, hold down the Shift key and select the last. That's an easy way to get all these selected. And then we'll use the upgrade. And we got our success message down here. Found several edges, wiring them, and we have a wire object. These are still selected, so it's convenient to be able to delete them all. Delete them to keep your tree clean, so you don't have so many objects in here. Then we'll upgrade this to make a face, and then we'll delete the wire. Once you made a face, you're pretty much gonna succeed with the rest of the operations, because that means all the wires were coplanar. It found them, it wired them together, and you've got a closed wire. Else the face would fail if the wire had not been closed. So we're going to extrude this back by the distance of this edge here. So let's just make this edge temporarily, like we did in the previous video, to get a length. So the length of that line is 6.85, we'll call it. Now we could extrude, let's go to part. We could sweep along this edge. That would work too. But I prefer to extrude, because then I can come back if I decided later and change the length of that extrude easier than it would be to change the length of this line. Now you could change the length of this line. It is a draft line, and length is one of the properties, so we can, you see, make it longer if we wanted to. But I don't want to here. I'm going to delete it, select the face, extrude it, 6.85 millimeters, apply, Okay, it went the wrong direction. Actually, it went the right direction, but not the desired direction. So this shows the advantage of using apply instead of OK. OK would close it. Of course, we could close it and go in to the extrude object and set the reversed property. But I'm going to undo, click reversed here, and then apply again, and then close it. Don't hit OK to close because it'll do another extrude and you have an extra extrude object. Now let's hide these and see what we have so far. Now let's check the geometry on this. No errors, that's good. Look at the shape content and we've got a solid. That's what we want. Okay, and now we're going to do this face here, extrude it in this direction, and then fuse those two faces together. So we'll create the outline, select these points, those 8 points, and we'll create the closed polygon. I'm calling it a polygon. It's not a regular polygon, but it is a polygon. Now we can upgrade these to a wire. The wire has been made successfully, so we can delete these edges and then upgrade the wire to a face and then delete the wire. Let's hide this stuff and look at our face. And we need to extrude the length of this edge. So we can make the edge and then look down here and see that it's 4.9899 millimeters long. So I'm just going to call it 5 millimeters. And I'll extrude that face 5 millimeters. Apply and close. And now let's test to see if we can fuse these together. If it fails, which it did not, okay, you can ignore that error. That error is because I accidentally double clicked one of these draft objects and I was not in the draft workbench. So let's check the geometry and it's good. We got the one solid, so we're good. Now notice we have an extra edge here that we don't really need. We can change the refine property to true and it clears out the extraneous edges. But I'm going to delete the fusion. I still have the extrude objects because I'm not finished yet with this object. I want to create this cone here. It's actually a tapered cone. It looks like a cylinder, but it's not. This circle is slightly smaller than this one, so there's a slight taper to that. It's subtle, but it's there. So we'll make that next. This bit inside of here, we'll do that last because it extends into here. Let's hide the key. So can you see that cone there? It extends into here. So we're not going to cut it out yet because we haven't made this part yet. So what we're going to do here is make a couple circles and loft them together. So we need 3 points along this perimeter. And let's swing it around and make sure we got the right points and not something behind there. And then we create the circle. And that creates a draft circle. These are all draft objects. and it has a make face property. We can set to false if we don't want a face, and set it to true because we do. And we could also change the radius if we wanted to. So it gives us some options to make some modifications. If that was a modification we wanted to make, we'd be able to make it by changing the radius of the circle. And we'll do this other circle on this back end as well. And then we just loft these two together. Select them both, create a solid, say OK. So let's look at what we have so far. Coming right along. That face needs to be hidden. These circles need to be hidden. That's why that was looking kind of strange. And then the next part will be this little cross at the end. We'll show our points object again. And I'm just going to connect these dots. And create the polygon. Upgrade those individual lines to a wire. Once that's successful, delete the lines, select the wire, upgrade that to a face, and then delete the wire. So now what remains is to extrude this face into this tapered cylinder here. And we'll get a measurement like we've done before by creating that edge. And with this 4.55 millimeters long, I'll just make it 5 and let it extend into this part here. Delete that line, extrude 5 millimeters, apply, and close. Hide the original and the points object, and we're ready to go ahead and fuse all of these together, because the other part that we're going to have is going to be that's these two together. That's why we're having the Z fighting here. The other part is going to be a cut. It's going to cut this hole out. So we select these 4 objects, fuse them together, and then we can set our refine to true. And check the geometry on that. No errors, that's good. And we've got our solid. So now, let's hide this. How do we go about making this thing? It's actually a little cone inside of there. You can see from the side it comes to a point. So there are a couple of ways we could do this. One way is to loft that central point. Let me zoom in a bit here. This point to the circle. We could loft to that circle and then extrude that face that gets created. That's one option. Another option is to create a line from this point out here to one of these edges, one of these points, doesn't matter which one, and revolve that line to create that face. So that's what I'll do. I haven't used the revolve tool yet, so we'll revolve this line, And if we hide this, we can see that we made that face. And now what we need to do is extrude that out. So we click on it and click extrude, and it doesn't matter how long it extends out. We can say apply and we'll get an error. We cannot determine the normal of the shape because of the shape, because it's a cone instead of a flat circle. Cannot determine the normal, which is the direction that it would be extruded into. Well, luckily this object is oriented properly with the major plane, so we can see the bottom here. When we click on bottom here on the navigation cube, we can see that we're looking straight into here from the bottom. So that tells me the direction I need is Z minus 1. If this were not oriented in this direction, then what we could do is create a line from that center point to the center of the circle. Let me show you how to do that. Well, let's just go ahead and apply this to see it in action, and then we can cut that from the fusion object. But I'm going to undo that and close it. So what we could do, let's hide this thing. If we did not know, if it was not oriented, so conveniently for us in the -1Z direction, we can make a line to use as a reference. Let me hide that. So what we need is a point in the middle of this circle here, which we can create in MeshRemodel. Make sure we have the right point selected. And here for the circle tool, if you look at the tooltip, it says control click to include a center point, or control shift click for only the center point. So I'm going to hold control and shift and click, and that creates this point here, this object, this center point on that circle. So now we can create a line segment between those 2 points and use that as a reference to tell Extrude which direction to go into. So we select our revolve again. You can see that's the line we just made. Select the revolve, click extrude, and this time we'll tell it along an edge, and we'll select this point as the edge. It needs to be 5 millimeters, and apply. Actually, it needed to be 10, didn't it? Let's undo that and put it at 10. 10 is going to extend out past, which is what we want. And we'll need to keep that line as part of the project, because that's now something the extrude object is depending on. Let's look at the dependency graph. You see extrude depends on the revolve and this line here. So we cannot delete that line. So we select the fusion and then the extrude and do the cut. And now our object is complete. We could do one final check geometry on it. It all looks good. And as a reference, we can show the original object. And you can see that we're pretty much spot on There are a couple of dimensions that I kind of rounded up very slightly, less than like 1/100th of a millimeter or something, but it's pretty much spot on. It's not super parametric, but there are some things that we could change if we wanted to. Like I mentioned, the radius of these circles, how far this extends in that direction. We can make it extend in this direction too. Which one is that? That's this one. So we could go here and say length reverse. We could add some length to that if we wanted it to come out in both directions. So if we needed this longer, that's a parametric option that we would have. So it's not completely parametric like it would be if you built it from scratch, but it does have some parametric elements to it. And when you're remodeling one of these, keep in mind what your goal is. Why are you remodeling it? What modification do you want to make? And you can incorporate that as you are remodeling so that it'll be parametric in that direction. If I wanted this face wider, for example, I might not have done exactly the way I did it. But that's going to do it for today. I still have a little bit left to cover in this workbench, so I'll probably do another video upcoming on it. We didn't look at the cross-section tool, which is really pretty neat. Maybe we can go ahead and take a quick look at that. This is just really a convenience link. It works like this tool here to make cross sections of FreeCAD objects, but it works on mesh objects. And it's actually a tool that's available in Mesh Design Workbench. So in Mesh Design, if you come down to cutting, you'll find the cross sections tool here. So this is not something I created. I wish I could take credit for it. So this is just a convenience link to that Mesh Design tool. But it's very neat. So you could create a cross section wherever you want it at, and then use that cross section to create your wire. Or you could even use that as a wire itself. Let's just hit OK here and I'll show you what the cross section looks like. So that's pretty neat. That's quick, but you don't want to use this directly because look, it's got all these extra edges in there, and it's going to create extra seam lines if you use that. So what you would do instead is use this as a reference to make the polygons. And we need to make an arc here. Like we did before. It's a lot neater, it's a lot cleaner to work with because you don't have all these points behind it, hiding it, obstructing, confusing you. So that's the cross-section tool. Can be very, very useful. The coplanar points tool, we haven't looked at that yet. But let's go through these real quick here. So with the coplanar points tool, what you can do is select 3 points on the plane. Make sure they're all on the plane. And then click this to create the coplanar points object. And what that's going to do is filter out all the other points that are not on this plane. So now we just have the points on that plane to deal with. It hid all the other points. So it's less confusing to select the points on this circle now than it would have been. Let me hide that and show you. So you're going to try to select these points on this circle, this edge. It's, it's a lot more confusing than if we were using the coplanar points object. So that's the main purpose of that. It also can be used to create a sketch and map all these points in that sketch as links to external geometry. And that can be useful for creating an ellipse. And that's what we'll look at in the next video. I'm going to go ahead and shut this one down now. We're at 30 minutes. And we'll look at creating an ellipse in the next video, because we'll have to do that in the sketcher. So thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.